the biggest reason why we're here is because we need returning citizens to be involved in their own issues. You know, we all can be involved on from an individual standpoint, but, you know, we need more of us to be involved in a lot of things that go on in the city, especially when people are advocating on our behalf for jobs, on our behalf for housing, on our behalf for a lot of the other issues that we face, a lot of the barriers that we face. So we need to be in the room. And so we thought that it would be best for us to have a returning citizen town hall. Now, we was going to have it in a couple of other locations, but then we thought about the pavilion, and we knew that the day was going to be a nice day, so we decided to have it here. So the reason that we're here is we want to talk about the #1 barrier. You know, a lot of us, you know, if you give a person a job, you solve a lot of his problems or her problems. But we've found out through research, I mean, you can look at the homeless population in D.C. right now, one of the largest per capita in the country. And through that research, we're finding out that housing, or lack thereof, is the #1 barrier from people, especially for people returning back to the city from federal destinations, okay? And that's a lot of individuals that come back yearly from federal destinations. In fact, many of these individuals have been incarcerated for 5 or 10 years or more, okay? And normally, you know, a lot of you know what I'm talking about because a lot of you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, and normally when a person is incarcerated that long, when they come home, they are ready to be home and they are ready to stay home, you know. But if their families have moved on and other mitigating circumstances prevent them from having a roof over their head, they end up in a shelter, or they end up on someone's couch, or they end up sleeping on someone's floor, you know, or they just simply on the street. So we have, our population has, you know, we are involved in this, this homeless, we are a part of the homeless population. And so we're trying to address that issue because, like I said, most of these individuals, they have paid their debt to society and they are ready to move on with their lives, and, you know, and they understand, a lot of them, I know, because I was in the penitentiary with a lot of them. And a lot of them understand that, okay, I need to come home and I need to do something different and I need to be ready for the things that are, you know, and prepared for the things that are ahead of me. And you can't keep a job without proof of address. A lot of things you can't even do if you cannot prove that you live, that you have an address. And so we really need to bring this attention, you know, this issue, I'm sorry, the attention that it deserves. So we asked some people to come out and give us, you know, talk to us about some of the myths. We can clean that up. We can talk about some of the things that are available for returning citizens and other citizens in the city. And then we can talk about some of the rules, the regulations, you know, things that you may know about or may not know about. And then we can talk about what are some of the next steps that we can take ourselves, you know, being returned citizens, being previously incarcerated, you know, being advocates of the returning citizen population. So, and then we have individuals who, you know, who are experts on a lot of this stuff. So that's where the conversation is, you know, is going to start. I wanted to say a couple of things about the reentry network for returning citizens, you know, because you see it's a Reclaim the Vote DC T-shirt, and you see our banner, the reentry network for returning citizens. And our goal, it's a volunteer organization. And see, you know, to me, you know, when I came home from jail, I felt like, you know, not only did I need to get my life in order, right, but I also needed to be an example of the power of God working in my life, in my community, you know, because I did a lot of damage in my community, hurt a lot of people, you know, and I was reckless in many ways, you know, and I was thoughtless. I didn't think of folks when I was doing what I was doing. But when I came home, that had all changed. You know, I was a different individual, and I was ready to be responsible, and I was ready to be accountable. And so, you know, what's the best way to do it? Then come home and volunteer, you know, start rebuilding my community, you know, get involved in things that's going on in my community. Let people see my face. Let people get to know me, you know, regardless of my background. You know what I mean? I'm not ashamed of my background. You know, I made a mistake, and I'm trying to move on with my life. And so the reentry, and then one of the things is called citizenship, you know. I need to get my citizenship. A lot of us, you know, when we come home, we need a job, but we actually need a lifestyle, you know, because a job is one thing, you know. A lifestyle is something totally different. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, I give a person a job, they'll work for me for a year, they won't work out, you know, because they end up making a mistake on a job. I got to let them go. A year later, they come back and say, Mrs. Stewart, I need a job, man. You know what I mean? And I tell them, like, I don't know about that. You know, give that some thought, because I gave you a job like 2 years ago. You know, so I don't know if it's that you need a job. You know, maybe you need to think through some other things. So the Reentry Network is about getting people, getting our rights back to vote. Okay, that's number one, because in D.C., we do have a right to vote. Okay, that has always been the case for us. So we can get involved in the voting process. That's the first step to citizenship, you know. And then we have this thing, people who are successful. We have people who have came home and they have been very successful at life, at working a job for 5 years or more, at owning a business for, for some time or more, you know. They are paying their taxes. They have sat on a jury. I've sat on a jury, okay? They, so it's, they get right back into the mainstream of society, and they have had some success. And so we feel like those individuals can be the catalyst for people coming home, can be the example for others who are coming back to the community. And we can help these individuals. We can help them by showing them the way, showing them the path, you know what I mean? And it may not be the, well, in many instances, it is the least resistant path, because we've been out here and we know what's going on out here in the community. So so that's what the Reentry Network about, in, the short of it. That's what we're about, and we want to be about much more, but, we obviously are doing the best we can, and we're looking for as much support as we can get. So now I'm going to turn it over to a person that I adore, and that's Aja, and she can talk a little bit about the Reclaim the Vote, and then we'll get into the conversation about housing. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Whew, that was dry. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Much better. Oh, yes, sorry. If you don't have a program, they're coming around also. So I'm Aja Taylor, and I'm an organizer at Bread for the City. I work actually in the Southeast office over on Good Hope Road. Come visit me sometime. And I work on a campaign that is led by the Reentry Network called Reclaim the Vote DC. So I work on it. Actually, Sherman, Shay, and a few other people in the room work on this campaign called Reclaim the Vote DC. And one of the things that Courtney mentioned was that as a returning citizen, you never lose your right to vote. I have administered polls inside of DC jail. As long as you are not serving time in a federal facility, you can vote. And so it's really important to get registered and to get involved in the political process. For just real quick, how many folks in here are returning citizens? And it's, I mean, don't be shamed. I mean, so that's the first thing, right? One, like, there's no shame in it, okay? There's no shame in being someone who made a mistake. And because the difference a lot of times between returning citizens and people who are not returning citizens is that you got caught. Okay? Let's be real about it. But in reality, so that was a good number of people. And I go to meetings all the time, and I go to council hearings, and people are having conversations about you. They are having conversations about what goes on in your life. And more important than having discussions, they are making decisions about you. They are making decisions about your life, about how easy or difficult it is to get employment, about how easy or difficult it is to get housing. There are people who are making these decisions about the rest of your life, and you are not in the room. We go to these meetings, and it's the same few people, right? I go to other meetings, and when you go to like the disability hearing, they pack the room. When you go and have something, the Chamber of Commerce packs the room. Returning citizens, there are 60,000 returning citizens in the District of Columbia at last count. There are 8,000 people who come home from federal facilities or DC jail every year. It should be standing room only. They should be turning people away at the door when they're talking about things like ban the box, or when they're talking about things like increasing access to housing, or when they're talking about things like building more residential reentry facilities or increasing opportunities for people who have criminal records. It should be impossible for people to get in the building. So that's what I'm about, right? I'm the person who works on organizing in communities and organizing returning citizens so that we can accomplish that and so that we can pack those rooms and so that we can affect change. So I'm done talking. And we're going to go ahead, and there's going to be a presentation from Rodney Mitchell talking about a model for residential reentry.
Okay, so, my name is Rodney Mitchell. I am a grateful returning citizen. I know a lot of faces in the room, native Washingtonian, and I'm here to say a couple things, right? When the young lady asked us to raise our hands if we have a criminal history, understand that that doesn't automatically put you in a second-class category, right? You know what I'm talking about? Because in Washington, D.C., we have the opportunity to do things that many people with our circumstances can't do. For instance, I'm a barred attorney. Okay, I did my time in the state of California, came home, went back to school, finished undergrad, finished law school, and was barred in the District of Columbia. Now, it took an extra 2 years for them to give me the license, right? But I was able to get that license. So what I'm saying is that if you're going to be an ex-offender, a returning citizen, this is probably one of the best cities to be in. Okay? What we're doing today is organizing. I want to thank Courtney. I want to thank Charles, Victor, Raheem Jenkins, all these people who've been in these kind of rooms for decades, for at least a decade, because I've been doing it for a decade, to talk about what are the needs of people coming back from prison and jail. Because we can just talk about, does he need a job? Courtney talked about that. No, it's just more than a job. As Courtney alluded to, it's a lifestyle. It's a whole lifestyle that comes with this whole proposition of returning. So the question for many years used to be, what's most important, housing or employment, employment or housing? We went back and forth about that. But the reality is that you can't separate the two if you really want success. There are models all around the country that combine these two major risk factors, all right? Major risk factor. You come home and you don't have housing, major risk factor. What do I mean by major risk factor? Anybody? You can go back. You come home and you don't have a way to get transportation and pay the bills, another risk factor, right? So you can't separate these two. We need to have them combined, housing and a way to earn a living. Now, this is not a unique proposition, okay? Around the country, a lot of us have traveled to different cities where they combine these two concepts. So what I'm going to talk about today is a similar kind of concept. We're talking about housing. We're also talking about supportive services. We're talking about putting this all under one roof. This is a concept. Because, see, the thing that the powers that be need to know is that to stop looking at their citizens and residents with criminal histories as liabilities, but look at them as persons to invest in. To invest in, not to think about, you know, what can we do with them, but to look at how can we support them. And there's always four entities involved in this proposition. You have the individual, right, who has the primary responsibility. The man or woman coming home has the responsibility to take care of their business, number one. Number two is the community, right, what we're doing right here. The community has to embrace, forgive, because there's been a lot of harm done out there by a lot of us. I'll speak for myself. So we got to forgive these folks coming back. Okay, and Courtney talked about citizenship. The person coming home, that's why we changed the term from returning from ex-offender to returning citizen. It's a reason why. We demand to be citizens. We demand to pay taxes. We demand to be a part of the mainstream, you know? So they have that responsibility. Then you have the government. The government has to provide that infrastructure because we pay taxes into it. That's what we pay them for. They're public servants. They do our bidding because we are the people, right? So we got those three things going on. The individual, the community, and the government working in tandem. That's the basis of the concept for the program we're talking about today in terms of a public, private, and nonprofit partnership where we're not working in silos anymore, right? We're not just running after the grants. The government isn't looking at it as an us and them kind of proposition. The nonprofits aren't running around trying to get contracts. It's a real collaboration. A real collaboration, and at the heart of it are the people who are coming home to say that, you know what, I'm ready, I'm primed to do this job. Every other week, I'm down at the federal courthouse talking to men who've just come back from the federal penitentiary. That's what I do twice a month for the last 5 years. And I can tell you that these men are ready. They're ready, right? A person does time in prison. When they come home, their intent is to what? Stay home. They don't intend to go back. They intend to stay home. So we have to make sure that we help support that good intention, right? I talked about those three entities. The individual, the community, and the government has to support that intention. So let me get into the presentation. We covered a lot of this stuff, what the barriers are, with many, many, many barriers. And I love what Courtney talked about in terms of it's not just a job. Some folks come home, they're not even ready for a job yet. They got to get address all those other issues. We're going to talk about behavior modification and cognitive self-change and being honest about what's going to get you really to the next step, okay? And this presentation, it gives a comprehensive viewpoint in terms of what are the standards, what are the best practices around the country to really make a difference. Housing, we know that. That's kind of my pet peeve. You got to have a roof over your head. And let's be clear, the shelter is not an appropriate place for a man or woman to go to after prison. Okay? It's just not appropriate. Sometimes it's the only thing left when it's 25 degrees out there and wind chill factor makes it 17 degrees, but it's not appropriate. We need places that can really support and understand what a person has just dealt with when they come home from prison and jail. Basic program elements. These are just basic things, right? Initial screening and program placement. One size doesn't fit all, so you have to do that real serious clinical assessment to find out what are the risk factors for an individual, to find out what are their barriers, what are their deficits, what are their strengths. You have to have this in any program. We can't be doing this stuff now just willy-nilly and off the cuff. We got to follow the best practices, the evidence-based practices, and make sure we're doing this thing the right way by the science. We got to put just as much effort and time into this proposition as we do anything else. Okay? 6 months vocational apprenticeship training. I love that. 6 months of an opportunity to learn a skill. 75% of everybody in America that makes above minimum wage has a what? A skill. Whether it's academic, whether it's occupational, whether it's technical, they have some kind of skill. If you don't have that skill, you are going to be working in the trenches minimum wage most of your career. 90-day paid internship. Okay? That's along the lines of the project empowerment kind of model where you're getting paid while you're doing this learning process. Graduation. Graduations are always important. You have to show and acknowledge folks when they take the next step. For some people, this might be their first graduation. So we want to have that ceremony. We want to have entering class participation. We want to have workshops and seminars to help bolster that class that you just taken. We want to have that continuum of services and supports from the beginning through post-graduation. 3-year post-graduation mentorship and follow-up. The ex-offender housing program, including temporary therapeutic housing and permanent housing placement. Housing. That is the pink elephant in the room, ladies and gentlemen, for our population. That is the pink elephant in the room. That is the thing that we most need. We've talked about jobs. We've talked to any number of people about training opportunities. We've talked to people about all kind of things that have to do with employment. But that housing question has to be addressed. It has to be addressed through a public, private, and nonprofit cooperative arrangement. This is the model. It just kind of diagrams what we talked about. At the center of this is the returning citizen, a housing program, a mentorship program, life support programs, graduation, internships, and training. Initial screening. These are some of the options that we could start looking at in D.C. in terms of having alternatives for housing. So you come home from jail or prison, and you go to the halfway house, and you leave there after a certain amount of time. What's the next step? For me, I went to a transitional house when I left the halfway house. I went to a transitional setting where I was renting a room with 3 other guys in a home, in a community, going to work, independent living. I was independent. I was no longer under the auspices of the state of California correctional system. I was still on parole, but I wasn't living in one of their facilities, right? So we're talking about independent living. At some point, you got to break the apron string, right? So whether it's a single room occupancy or it's an Oxford House style placement. Anybody heard of Oxford houses? You familiar with that? Oxford houses? No. Oxford houses are therapeutic, independent living homes, for lack of better words. It's an organization, and it's about sober living. It's about clean living. It's about taking that next step for many people. Sometimes it becomes even more permanent. Short and long-term leases, so we can go month to month, we can go day to day, we can go week to week. Blighted property programs. We have homes all over D.C. We got buildings just dilapidated, just sitting there waiting for somebody to develop them and give a person an opportunity to live independently. And at the end of the road, I won't say the end of the road, is eventual home ownership. Home ownership, and I would say, y'all, stay in the District of Columbia where the prices are still good and the values are still good, okay? Next slide, please. Vocational apprenticeship training programs, carpentry, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, landscaping, real estate paralegal, residential property management. These are solid programs that will get you into that next level of income and earning. You will be able to afford tuition and groceries and mortgages and all those kind of things with these kind of occupations. Do not sleep on these kind of occupations. You know, people got something. Everybody has to be a doctor, lawyer. You can be a butcher, baker, or candlestick maker as long as that thing is paying. All right? Next slide, please. This is organizational structure. At the top, you have a public-private partnership, nonprofit, and government coordination. You have an advisory committee made of government, faith-based organizations. And let me just step back. The faith-based community has been doing reentry work for many, many years. All right? I just want to acknowledge Reverend Isaac real quick. I saw him in the crowd. Been in this business for a long time. Real estate developers, financial institutions. On the other side, we have operational supports, admin assistants, and caseworkers. Go ahead. Life support program partners. We have folks that want to do post-release social services. We just don't kick you out the door and say, okay, now you're on your own. We want that continuum of support. That continuum of support. Drug and alcohol counseling. We know what goes on there. Great numbers. I just finished doing some work at the D.C. jail, all right? Many of those men and women that are coming through there are suffering with substance abuse. That is their primary issue. That is their primary issue. It's not that they're inherently criminal, but they have that proverbial monkey on their back. And until you address that, you will always be in the spin cycle, the criminal justice system. So we want to make sure that you understand whatever ails you, if it's substance abuse, if it's mental health issues, if it's anger management, whatever ails you, you need to correct that and get that taken care of immediately, ASAP. Parenting Skills Network, that's very important. Many of these young men and women walking around the streets of D.C. have parents who are in the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the D.C. jails. So we want to make sure when we come back that we're able to support them. Anger management workshops, self-explanatory. Physical and mental health services. Now, this is the thing, right? There's no stigma. There's no stigma. If you have a mental health issue, you have to address it. Whether you're dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome as a result of jail and prison, right? Or you dealing with some other kind of issue, you know? You have to address it. You know, I'm not telling you have to take medications. I'm not telling you what you need to do, but you have to address it. You need to call that hotline with the D.C. Department of Mental Health and get hooked up with their providers, ASAP. This is a concept that's long overdue where you have all these support services and a ways to earn a living under one roof. Through a partnership, I absolutely see this as a possibility. I don't see this as a pie-in-the-sky kind of proposition. But we have to understand, it's not the government's charge to just do it. It's not the nonprofits just to do it. It's truly a partnership, okay? I want to thank Courtney again for putting on this wonderful event, and I'm done.
Okay, so all the presentations are over, and now it's time to talk. So when we talk about housing, and the idea of this town hall was for it to be a community forum. So Rodney Mitchell presented some ideas around ideas that are currently exist around residential reentry facilities. But when we talk about barriers and solutions, like what sorts of ideas do people have in terms of what the city needs to help people connect people to housing upon exit? And say your name. So stand up, say your name.
Isaiah Davis. I work for Congress Heights. Also work in Hope Village. I'm a teacher there. I speak to the guys every day, and I think the biggest barrier is communication. Starts with the government, starts with Hope Village. They don't give them communication leaving out. So sometimes they go out in the blind, and then they don't have email addresses. You know, it's not like with most of us here, we receive the email, we'll be able to come up. So it's the barrier really is barrier communication towards them. Like a lot of them leave out, and they don't know where to go, what to do, some of them. And that's what the biggest barrier to me is.
Okay, thank you, Isaiah. Any others? Right, so in the room, we also have some folks who are on kind of a panel, although we're sitting community style, to help give us some insight into the conversation. So we have Felisa Carter, who is my coworker at Bread for the City. She's a senior staff attorney, and she works specifically on like housing law. And she testified at City Council at Ban the Box and talked a lot about the landscape. We have Reverend Isaacs, who is here and who does a lot of work around reentry. We have Michael Kelly, who is the director of the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD. We have Adrienne Todman, although I didn't think I saw her walk in. But Adrienne Todman will be here, who is the director of the Housing Authority. And so the point of having these folks in the room, in addition to informing the conversation, is because these are also the folks we need to be talking to. These are folks who make decisions around housing. Yeah, so it just makes sense to have them in the room. So are there other solutions or other ideas, even if it's not a full solution, other ideas? Or is everyone?
Thank you. My name is Ray Parker, and for the past 30 years, I've owned a construction company in the district, and I'm a district resident. And in that capacity, I have used guys from the various halfway houses as day workers, and I wish I could do more. Mm-hmm. I come from the old concept of put your hands to the plow. I believe in on-the-job training, but I believe tools over brooms. I believe if you put one guy with two mechanics, he's definitely going to learn. And while he's learning, he's earning. The good thing about the district is most of the things that Mr. Mitchell spoke about are in place. The problem is that as a resident, I see it, And as a citizen, I know you guys know it also, we are not part of the billions of dollars that are spent on construction. When you drive around the city and you see the construction sites and you see the people doing the work, our participation is not as great as it should be. And I think we all have seen that. I believe that the concept that Mr. Mitchell spoke about with housing, if you can get housing to give up some of those, and I don't mean give up, but present some of those vacant lots and some of those houses that they have boarded up, and you have the guys, you bring the guys out, let those guys work on those jobs, and they're creating the housing for the city that they need for the various programs that the city need housing for. It's a win-win situation. The good thing about it is that the things that Mr. Mitchell spoke about are not long-term, they're not down the road, they're happening now. So these things can be put in place within months, not years. These things are there. It's like he said, we need a collaboration where these things are brought together and people just, I'm a simple guy, but I can do so many things with my hands. And at 56, I'm a little slow, but I can still work and I can do so many things with my hands. I have photos of the guys from the halfway houses jacking up buildings in Southeast. I have them tearing out stuff and rebuilding. So I know they can do it. And that concept that guys don't want to work, that's not true. We just need an opportunity. So I'm looking here. I'm hoping to make the connection with and be part of the collaboration that can make that thing happen. My thing is construction. Thank you.
Thank you. So actually, we're going to pick this up, but as everyone saw, right, we have a guest, Mayor Gray, who's going to talk, and we'll have an opportunity to ask him some questions specifically around reentry and housing.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all very much for being here. By the way, isn't this pavilion nice? Wow, y'all are really enthusiastic today, aren't you? No, this is something that this really foreshadows what we're trying to do with this campus, and that is bring it to another place. We have 100. The other side of the avenue is owned by the federal government. There's 180 some acres over there, 180 some acres over here. We, of course, have the new Coast Guard headquarters over there, and that's now open. They have 3,700 employees. When they get to their full peak, there'll be 3,700 employees that will be over there. And over here, this is going to be used for a lot of different purposes, starting with the pavilion. The pavilion is really being used. It's a community place. And that's why we're doing what we're doing in here today. We've had a number of events in here, and there will be more. We're inviting the ANCs, the civic associations, and others to be able to take advantage of this, because one of the things we want to do is to get people to recognize that while this may have been a mental health facility for, I don't know, well over 100 years, it really is not anymore. We have a hospital that's over on the backside, but the rest of this campus is going to be a community asset. And we want everybody who's connected with this area of the city in one way or the other to feel good about using this place. You know, the fence will probably stay up, but the gates are open now. We want people to walk onto this campus and feel very much a part of the community, because, again, it's 180 acres. We've got retailers that are going to be coming in here. We'll have new housing that will be coming here. We've got some technology work that's going to be done here as well. Some of you may already know that Sidlam, which is a French-based firm, is going to locate its North American headquarters right here on the campus of St. E's. SmartBIM, which is a technology firm also that originally was in Atlanta, is locating its, thank you very much, Charles, is locating its innovation center here. And then the one that we really are proud of that's going to do a lot for this area, and I didn't talk about this until it came to fruition, and that is a firm that is headquartered in Redmond, Washington, is going to locate its first innovation center, if you will, outside in the U.S., outside of Redmond, Washington, right here on the grounds of St. E's. And if I had said that we were working to bring this firm to Ward 8 folk would have said, you better change your brand of smoke, man, because you got a problem. Microsoft has agreed to come to Ward 8 of the District of Columbia, and there's going to be a lot of jobs connected with that. And one of the things we want to make sure we do is ensure that our returning citizens have an opportunity to be trained to be able to get these jobs, because I know not everybody has a whole lot of patience for training. Nobody wants to go through 9 months of training and then you don't know whether you get a job at the end of it. You don't know what happens, and some people just don't have the time to be able to go through 9 months of training. They want to get a job now, and that's exactly what we've been working to do. I want to start by thanking Courtney for bringing people together today. How about a big hand for Courtney Stewart? Thank you, and that's the kind of constructive activity that I think will allow us to be able to continue to make progress on, I think what everybody would agree is a very challenging issue that we have, and that is people who have gotten past whatever they, challenges they had can have a reasonable chance to have a entry opportunity back into society. And I want to thank all of you all for coming out today to be a part of this. I also want to thank Charles Thornton. Charles, for those of you who don't know, I met Charles during the last campaign. Remember that, Charles? We were walking down 11th Street Northwest. He was coming up the street, I was going down the street. And the good advocate that he is, he moved over to the other side of the sidewalk and he said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Of course." He said, "I'm Charles Thornton. I'm an advocate for reentering citizens." And, we went on, we had about, 45-minute conversation on the sidewalk. And I said to him, I said, "Well, Charles," I said, "I don't know whether I'm going to be successful with this endeavor or not. But if I am successful with it, I would love to have you come and work with me." So we were successful, and Charles has been the director of our Office of Returning Citizens Affairs from the very beginning. And I think he has done a fantastic job of really working with a very challenging issue in the District of Columbia. Thank you, Charles, for what you've done. Hey, man, if you got the seal of approval from Tyrone Parker, and Tyrone, by the way, is one of my longtime friends. Tyrone, how long have we known each other? 25 years at least? At least. It's been a minute. It is, and we're going to keep riding, too. In any event, I want to thank all of you all for coming out today. We have some of our folks who work with the administration. We have Michael Kelly with the Department of Housing and Community Development who's here. I want to ask Michael to add, some words to this when I finish, because he does have the agency that is responsible for housing in the District of Columbia. A lot of people don't realize we have 3 housing agencies, and only one of them actually report to me. That's the one that Michael has. The Housing Authority is run by a board of directors. Of course, they run public housing in the city. And then we have the Housing Finance Agency, which provides funding support, loans, bonds, or whatever the case may be, to build or purchase and renovate housing in the District of Columbia. That's run by a board of directors also. In fact, I'm thinking when we get to the next term that it might be time to rethink how we do housing work in the city. And I'm not suggesting that I'd reorganize all those agencies. That's crazy to try something like that. But it may be that we want to have a higher level person overseeing housing, because it's all now connected to economic development. Economic development has really taken off in this city. I don't know how many of you saw, we had the groundbreaking the other day for Skyland, which is up, at the top of the hill on Good Hope Road, Alabama, and Naylor Road, where they all come together. The Southwest Waterfront groundbreaking is going to take place next week. We have, between projects that have been finished and ones that we are starting, is 66 or 68 projects involved, which will involve a lot of work. And by the way, Skyland is going to have, somebody was asking me this earlier, Skyland will have 300 construction jobs and 300 permanent jobs that will be created over the course of redeveloping that area. And I want to make sure, too, Charles, that we have opportunities for our returning citizens, you know, as a part of that. Nick Majette, where's Nick? Oh, there he is, right in the back. Nick, who's done a fantastic job with the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. I used Nick's famous line the other day. I used it in the State of the District, and that is, Nick told me, he said, do you know what people used to call DCRA? I said, well, I don't think it was very positive. He said, no. He said, DCRA stood for Don't Come, Run Away. And he has created a different culture and a different environment over there, and I'm really proud of what Nick has done. So thank you, Nick, and thank you for being here this afternoon as well. And the gentleman who chairs our mayor's interfaith committee, who actually is the director, too, of the East of the River. By the way, you know I don't use East of the River anymore, right? I don't use that term anymore. He chairs our committee on the mayor's interfaith committee, and is the head of the East of the River police clergy. Did I get that in the right order? Close enough, right? Okay. And that's Donald Isaac. Thank you, Donald, for what you've done working with us as well. And I'm going to ask them to add, each one of them to add some thoughts to this when we get to it. Again, one of the things that we've tried to do is we've tried to create, you know, elevate the Office of Returning Citizens Affairs, so people recognize it wasn't just, you know, a 1 or 2 person operation that was put in place. So if somebody asked me, what are y'all doing for returning citizens, I would just send them over there, you know, knowing that there was not much to be able to be done. We've really tried to build a credible operation. And that's what I told Charles. I said, Charles, you're a great advocate, and I'm not going to put you in a position of taking on this job, and then when the time comes, a lot of the people who you know and trust you will be disappointed because you didn't get done what they want you to do, and me knowing full well up front that you didn't have any chance of getting it done in the first place. So I don't know how many of you all have been to the Resource Center down at 2100 Martin Luther King Avenue. It really is a nice place. We put a lot of money into 2100 to make it an inviting place. And we have a staff there. We're going to add another person or two to the staff. But the concept, and I think Charles fully supports this, is to not try to create a whole different network of operations, you know, for returning citizens, because that's the old concept of separate but unequal. I'm not into that. My idea is that every agency in this government has a responsibility to returning citizens, and therefore I'm not going to try to recreate the Department of Employment Services. I'm not going to try to recreate the Department of Transportation or the Department of Public Works. Those agencies are going to have to step up and recognize that each one of those agencies has a responsibility to the folks who live in this city, who have gotten past whatever challenges they may have had, and they deserve an opportunity as well to be able to live the good life in the District of Columbia. You know, and in that regard, I want to just report on a few things. First of all, I know, because I think the first person I ever talked to about Bay in the Box was Tyrone, and that was when I was on the council. Remember that, Tyrone? And we've done it now. We've done it with the DC 2000 employment application. We have banned the box, and as a result, I don't know how many of you all know this, but we have hired 534 returning citizens in the government from various jobs in the government, working in a variety of agencies in the DC government. In addition to that, between 2011 and 2014, we have made 406 construction job placements. Again, these numbers are not huge, but they're setting a tone to go in the right direction. We also have developed relationships, and this is one of the things Charles is really good at and he's been working on, and that is with a number of district employers like the new Marquis Hotel, the new Convention Center Hotel, down at, what is that, 9th and Mount Vernon, whatever. Yeah, y'all know where the Convention Center is. You don't need me to tell you that. Down by the Convention Center, right across from it. The new hotel will open in about 45 days, and it's going to be a nice addition to the city. Harris Teeter, Walmart, we now have 2 new Walmarts. They each hired 400 people, 68% of whom were district residents. They are building 4 more in the district, one of which is already well under construction. 2 will be in Ward 7. One of those 2 will be at Skyland. And then the 6th, I can't remember where the 6th one is going to be. Where is it going to be, Charles? Anybody know right offhand where it's going to be? It'll be in the city. I just can't remember where it will be right now. Where? No, that's the 2 in Ward 7. East Capitol and Skyland are the 2 in Ward 7. There are 3 underway. I just can't think of where the 6th. You know what? We'll figure it out. Yeah, Ward 4 has 2. Yeah. Ward 6 has 1 now. That's Ward 6 down on 8th Street. No, Naylor Road is Skyland. Man, we ought to offer a prize, whoever gets this one right. Anyway, it'll be the 6th. Where? No, that's the Ward 5 one. Yeah, that's Ward 5. Is that Ward 5? Okay, Riggs Park was the one that I was mentioning. That's the one that's under construction now. I just can't think of where it is. I can't believe I'm blocking on that. Oh, well, it'll come to me before we get out of here. Also, we have a digital inclusion computer training program that we started now in 2000. In fact, in 2012, I think it was the National League of Cities did a paper on that to talk about this as a best practice of how, for underserved populations, this is a technology program that's been created to be able to get the doors open for folks for whom they may have closed. We are also doing CDL, everybody, commercial driver license training. We have now trained, in 2013, we trained 112 returning citizens for CDL licenses, and that's through the Department of Public Works that we're doing that. I'm not sure how many have actually gotten jobs at this stage, but I think all of the folks have gotten the license at this stage. The DDOT and DGS have worked with folks around street signage replacement and street marketing training, and that's 40 reentrants who have gotten positions through that. We also have positions as, I guess we call them leaf removers during the fall. And there's a lot of people who've been hired. A lot of them are returning citizens who've been hired on those jobs. Admittedly, not full-time, 365 a day, 365 days a year jobs, but jobs that are steady. And we've brought people on, too, because when all that snow we've had, and by the way, there's a call for snow again tomorrow, right? But all that, we've had 25 snow events since November 1st. And we've brought people on to help pick up the trash because we could not pick up the trash when the snow was on the ground. In order to make sure that people got their trash picked up in a timely fashion, we've now brought on extra employees to be able to get that done, because the only thing worse than the thing that's just next to snow, in terms of if you don't get it off the ground, you get nailed for that, and then don't pick up people's trash in a timely fashion, because you get nailed for that as well. We also have opened the doors of the community college. We are really trying to grow the community college in the city, and we're opening the doors in a lot of ways for returning citizens, training in electrical, HVAC, plumbing, carpentry, and then brick masonry classes as well. And I don't know how many people we've had participate in that, but they've been open to reentrants from the very beginning. We're collaborating with Goodwill Industries. We've had 140 returning citizens who participate in the customer service training through that program. We also have connected with our universities to try to make sure that the universities are opening their doors. The universities used to be just kind of in the District of Columbia, but not of the District of Columbia. And for those who, I assume everybody understands the distinction. If you're in it, you're just in a place. But if you are of it, you have embraced, your presence, you are a neighbor, you're part of it, and so on and so forth. So we've been working with Georgetown, Howard, and George Washington University, which I graduated from. They're providing technical assistance and evaluation services, and they're doing it without cost to the District of Columbia. And then on the legislative side, we had a number of things going. The Public Inclusion Act, ban the box, which I talked about. We changed the office of, what was it, ex-offender affairs at one point? Yeah, that's really kind of gross, isn't it? Now it's the Office of Returning Citizens Affairs, and that's a lot more dignified to me. And then the Reentry Facilitation Amendment Act. We also, at the Reentry Center now, right, we have a computer lab center. Charles? Where'd Charles go? We have a computer lab that's operational now?
You got one in the office, the resource center, but we also have a lab in Ward 7.
Okay.
Community college is up and out.
Where is it located in Ward 7?
At Shad Elementary, that's the new community college. That's 5601 East Capitol Street, the old Shad Elementary.
Yeah. Right across from, I guess it's now, yeah, Maya Angelou. Yeah, used to be Evans, right? Bruce Evans School. And we have we put together a reentry initiative executive order, which really spells out the policy of this administration, and is directed at 15 agencies and 3 federal agencies. I wish we could tell the federal agencies what to do, but we can't. But 3 of them have signed on. So we got 18 agencies now that have agreed to work with us in a variety of ways to be able to find housing, to find jobs, because those are the 2 key things, jobs and housing. If you don't get those 2 things straightened out, the rest of it doesn't matter. If you get those 2 things done, the rest of it is not so hard at that point. So I wanted to share with you all some of the things that we're actually doing, and know that we've got a long ways to go. Again, I commend Charles for the work that he's done. We've tried to be true to what we said we were going to do in the first place. And what we're trying to do is make sure we continue to open the doors of our own agencies to recognize the responsibility to people who have been through a difficult time in their life and have gotten that behind them, and now they need to go to, have an opportunity to go to a different place, rather than pushing people back in the direction that they want to get away from and may not feel the support to be able to do something different. So before we open it up for any questions or comments, I'm going to ask Michael Kelly if he would make a few comments about what's going on with DHCD, the work they're doing with Charles's office. And by the way, just so you know, we put $187 million this year into affordable housing, and some of that housing will be for returning citizens. I just made the commitment this week to add another $100 million to that. So we'll have $287 million, which is a heck of a lot of money. That's more than $250 million being devoted to keeping this city affordable. And affordability will be focused on a lot of different groups. And one of those groups will be returning citizens, as we recognize the difficulty that many of you all have finding housing, and we want to make sure that we create those opportunities for folks. People may want to move on as they become more prosperous. As you get a job, as you earn more money, you may want to move on to other situations. So that will go, a lot of it will go into the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is managed through the Department of Housing and Community Development. So I'm going to ask Michael if he will speak first, then Nick, if you could come up and talk about where DCRA fits into this, and then Donald, if you could talk about the Mayor's Interfaith Committee. We just had a big session this week where we talked about working with people who are homeless and the housing needs. In fact, you know what? Let's just do the housing agencies together. Adrian Todman, who's the executive director of the Housing Authority, is with us as well. 2 out of 3, and she manages some of our voucher programs. So I'm going to ask Michael to talk first, and then Adrian, if you can talk about the Housing Authority and the voucher programs, because housing is such a huge issue for the folks who are here. All right, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Hey, everybody. Great afternoon. Michael Kelly, for those that don't remember me, actually, this is my second time back in what is my now home, Washington, D.C. Seeing Tyrone reminds me of that. I had the opportunity to serve in what Adrian is doing now as the Director of Public Housing for a while. In that tenure that I left, I was up in New York City working with Mayor Bloomberg, and in Philadelphia working with Mayor Nutter. When our mayor just a moment ago mentioned his commitment of $187 million last year and his commitment of $100 million at the State of the District address just very recently, it is amazing. It is unprecedented, and I beg you, please give it a hand for our mayor, the unprecedented commitment to affordable housing that is really the envy of the country right now. Why this is so important is because, as we all know, this town is changing very, very quickly and very dramatically, and our mayor is committed to having a diverse and inclusive city. The only way we can do that is to have partnerships, and Mr. Mitchell talked about the importance of having partnerships with the nonprofit entity, and Jim Knight of Jubilee is here, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about that amazing effort. Private sector partnership, how do we incentivize the private sector to invest in what is important for the city, and on public. And in public partnerships, I think it's really, really overlooked what this mayor has done in his administration in having folks like Adrian and Nick and others working in a way that is really collaborative and a way that is collegial. And why that is important is because, as was noted earlier, it's not just housing. It's about jobs, it's about social services, it's about wraparound support. And this can only be done if government agencies are talking and working with each other. And again, I look at the gray hair, and Tyron, you remember that I used to be thinner not that long ago. This is an unprecedented word that keeps rolling off my tongue. My colleagues under this administration really kind of like each other. That's the other thing. We like each other. We're under the mayor's vision of making it work for us, and it is a really incredibly exciting time. I'm honored to serve as the Director of Housing and Community Development. In that role, we actually, again, work directly for the mayor, and we're looking at creating 10,000 units of affordable housing by 2020. Well, based on the fuel of $187 million from last year's commitment and $100 million that was just noted in the State of the District address, we are over halfway toward that goal right now, and I think we can, Mayor, beat that goal by a lot very, very quickly. So I think this is something that's very important. It does talk a lot about the partnership effort. We could not do that without the Housing Authority. We could not do that without the Department of Behavioral Health, the Department of Human Services, the Housing Finance Agency. And what, again, unprecedented, we have entered into a memorandum of agreement that means that all of our money now gets pooled for the creation of affordable housing, and what we have is what we call a notice of funding availability. That's where we put this money all in a big pile, and we say, okay, how can we serve the city best? Well, what we do is that we now look at providing housing that brings in money from behavioral health, brings in money from the Housing Authority, brings in money from the Housing Finance Agencies. And last year, we funded about 1,000 units of housing, and over 450 units of those housings were for folks that needed permanent supportive housing. That's the kind of stuff we're really talking about, where it's beyond housing. It's really looking at housing plus having additional resources to get work, to get employment, to get educational opportunities, to get kind of social service opportunities. And so we're really committed, Mayor, to really bumping up that number this time around. I'm going to end because I do have want to make sure that my partner, who usually kicks me at this point, has an opportunity to share what goes on in the Housing Authority. But it is really an incredible opportunity, a real honor. The things that we are looking at, again, on this side of the river are really remarkable. We are now working with the Department of Housing and Community Development, has a property acquisition and disposition department. I know that was noted earlier that one of the areas that is an opportunity for us, Mayor, is blighted properties. And we will now be taking a much more aggressive stand about how do we reproduce and how do we make those back into productive use. And it's back to Mr. Mitchell's presentation. It's about partnerships, working with nonprofits, working with other city agencies, and working with the private sector so we can all get this thing done. Anyway, God bless everybody. It's an effort well worth the effort today. Thanks again for all the work, Courtney and all. Thanks for pulling this together.
Good afternoon, everyone. As the mayor suggested, I'm Adrian Todman. I'm the director of the local housing authority. We're the folks who run public housing, and we're the folks who run the voucher program, or you may be more familiar with the Section 8 program. I'm happy to be here because I want to dispel a couple urban legends and hope that you can be my ambassador and pass this information on. There is a myth that because you have served time in jail or a prison that you cannot live in public housing or live in a unit that's subsidized by a voucher. That's not true. Let me repeat that. There is a myth that because you serve time in jail or prison, that you cannot live in public housing or you cannot live in a unit subsidized by a Section 8 voucher. That's not true. The only two instances where it absolutely is true is if someone was convicted of a Class A sexual offender, or you were manufacturing or doing production of meth. Other than that, while we may have some time frames around when you can re-enter public housing or the voucher program, there is no preclusion for someone to come back into the public housing or voucher programs. We've created a, I hope, easy to read and understand brochure that's outside that deals with basic questions like how do I get into public housing? Let me give you a little bit of advice. And I know that there are some of you here who represent the issues of some of our returning citizens. If there is an individual who is interested in coming back into public housing or reconnecting with a family who has a voucher, the head of household is key. So if your mom is still there, if a significant other is there, that person needs to be the one to make the request to the property manager to have you come back onto the lease. I'm not going to go into a lot of details because I know that if I start, there will be many, many personal questions that come up, but I wanted to make sure that you have this flyer here. If you do have questions about your particular situation, or if you want to learn more about the Housing Authority's rules, you can go to our website at dchousing.org, or you're certainly welcome to call us at 535-1000. I'm very pleased to serve as the chair of the Housing Committee on these issues under CJCC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, under Ms. Butler's leadership. And each month, my team and I get together and talk about these very difficult issues. And just this month, we're trying to tackle an issue that's making it difficult for folks like Mr. Kelly and Mr. Knight, who's here, to actually create specific housing programs for our returning citizens. And I'm certain once we look at that a little bit closer, Mr. Mayor, I may come to you with some thoughts about how we can make that better for our production. But I'm very happy to be here. We'll answer questions you have when it's at that point. But I did want to share that I think the most important thing I can say to this group right here, right now, is just what I said about being able to enter probably the city's largest affordable housing portfolio. And thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Nick Majette. I'm the director of the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. And our mission is to make sure that all residents, businesses, and visitors in the District of Columbia live in safe dwellings and otherwise are safe in buildings that are built in the District of Columbia. And to accomplish that mission, we issue all building permits for all new construction, and you've seen probably 60 cranes throughout the city, and you've seen a whole lot of new development. So we issue permits for all of those new developments. We also issue building permits for alteration and repairs and so forth to existing buildings. Charles Thornton told me to speak for about 3 minutes, and on my way over here, I used my app stopwatch, and my presentation was 20 minutes. So I know I got to keep it short, and Charles just gave me the sign if I'm going over too much. But everything starts at DCRA because if you're going to have a building, you have to come to us to get the building permit, and then once the building is completed, you have to get a certificate of occupancy. You also have to have that building inspected. So we have commercial inspectors to do the commercial inspections and housing inspectors to do the housing inspections. You also need to get a certificate of occupancy. As Adrian or Director Todman mentioned, there are a lot of myths about returning citizens and housing. In fact, just a couple years ago, there was an effort to take an abandoned building, which was a blighted apartment building, and we're working with Director Kelly on getting rid of some of these blighted properties. But they wanted to turn a former apartment building into housing for returning citizens. And the neighbors went ballistic, and they said they had to get a license. It was going to be a community-based facility, and they had to go to the Board of Zoning and all that kind of stuff. And that's just not true. returning citizens are treated just like anybody else for housing purposes. And the rules are, if you're living in a single-family dwelling, of course, you don't need any special license. You don't need a certificate of occupancy. You're able to live there without any special permission or anything. If you want to, if you want to have sort of a group home kind of setting where people, which is not that term is not recognized in the zoning law, but people use it sort of interchangeably with community-based facilities. But let's say you wanted to rent a house and then have a few of your colleagues stay there and operate as a family. Well, if you did that, you wouldn't need any special licenses, variances, certificates, or anything. Up to 6 people in a single-family dwelling, you'd be treated as a family, which means you don't need any permits or anything. You just move in there as a matter of right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And if you wanted to rent a house and maybe, if you own a house and you wanted to rent out rooms to individuals, you could do so up to 2 individuals. You could rent rooms to up to 2 individuals without any licenses, certificate of occupancies, or anything like that. And more than 3 occupants, you would need a business license and a certificate of occupancy. So, and what I did, I brought a few brochures, because the zoning law is probably one of the most difficult laws in the city, because there are about 20 zones in the city. So, it takes a while to figure out what they all mean, but for most purposes, people just need to know about housing, and that's why we're here today. But I brought a few brochures that kind of outlines the zoning laws. It tells you where all the zones are, what's permissible in those zones. But just keep in mind, if somebody tells you you need a special rule or variance for a returning citizen, that's just not true. And we're open. If there's someone here that is a housing provider, or if there's someone here who just wants to occupy a property and you think somebody told you that there are all these special rules for you, just give us a call, and we'll be happy to meet with you and go over what the zoning laws are. If you live in a property now and you're not sure about whether it's safe or not, give us a call. We'll come out and inspect it. And that's pretty much the way those laws go. And also, I was honored to have been appointed by Mayor Gray to serve on the Housing Task Force. And we proposed spending $1 million on housing. Shortly after that, he doubled down and added. He agreed with the $100 million, and he added 87, and then he added more. So we're up to almost $300 million. So we've kind of tripled down. And I remember going to a groundbreaking on Spring.
I'd never heard of. I've never been there before.
Well, that was Spring Place. Well, that was my old neighborhood. Yeah, that was my old neighborhood. So it felt good to be in my old neighborhood, Tacoma Park, D.C., where the mayor announced that he had, was going to put that much into affordable housing. So, and being a native Washingtonian, from a family of 7, we didn't always have the best housing, but it was decent housing and it was affordable housing, and that's very important. So, with that said, again, thanks for having me here. I'll stick around if there are any questions, and again, I'll have a few brochures if anyone wants them. And if you need any information from DCRA, give me a call. It's easy to reach any D.C. government employee by their first and last names at dc.gov. And I'm nicholas.majette@dc.gov. So, again, thanks for having me. Yeah, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Donald Isaac, and I live in Ward 7, and I run an organization that is in Ward 7 and 8, and I also have the distinct pleasure of serving as the chair of the Mayor's Interfaith Council. And before I say the brief things that I would like to say, I'd like us, first of all, let's give a hand to the mayor and all of his cabinet. I think that it's no small thing that we found the mayor of the city, also Deputy Mayor Kwanda, 3 agency directors who come out on a Saturday afternoon to talk about an area that in a lot of cities is looked at in a much different way. So I just think that we need to recognize that we're very fortunate and blessed, I think, as someone has said, to be in D.C. to struggle with this issue of reentry and returning citizens. I stand on behalf of the faith community. And the faith community is not just ordained clergy, but that is both clergy and members and laypersons who call ourselves persons of faith. Believe it or not, and we all know, those of us who've been around for a while, the government cannot fix this problem by themselves. All right, but they need us to join hands together in significant partnership. In that context, and in the mayor's recognition of that, the mayor has set forward an initiative to house 500 homeless families in the next 100 days. 500 homeless families in the next 100 days. And that's a big vision. But how many people know that to solve big problems, you need a big vision? And we're glad that they put both their time, their money, and their expertise behind that. And in that context, the mayor has asked his interfaith committee that he wants one congregation to adopt one family. One congregation to adopt one family. And I don't think that's asking too much. Anyone who calls itself a mosque, a church, a synagogue, that is our obligation, regardless of our particular faith perspective, to support our brothers, to help those who are our brothers and sisters and those who are in need. Within that group of 500 homeless families, a number of them are returning citizens. So that the issue of homelessness, when you hear homelessness, when you hear supportive housing, when you hear permanent supportive housing, we all and you all are included within that population. The second part of that is that for the last 7 or 8 years, I have been one of the co-conveners along with Enterprise and Georgetown University to provide technical assistance, first of all, but it comes out of a challenge to the faith community. Because as we sit here today and talk about housing, the truth of the matter is that if we went down the list of a lot of vacant property owners, it wouldn't just be properties that the government owned, but a lot of those are owned by faith institutions. And I think it's a sin of omission to be in a city like we live in D.C. and to have the challenges that we have, and for a church, a mosque, or a synagogue to be sitting up with a building that's boarded up next door. So again, as we come today, we want to just challenge you to do our part, each of us, with this respective problem. So finally, do not be overwhelmed by the size of the problem. As I talk to pastors and imams and rabbis, one of the issues is that, they feel that it's too problematic. We just had the Director of Consumer Regulatory Affairs said if you have a problem in that area, he will help you, the Director of Housing, and others who are here. So do not be overwhelmed by the size of the problem. The way that what they say, eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So just do your part, stay in your lane, and then second part of that is be sure to link up and understand the importance of partnership. None of us can do this alone. And as we link, we have a government who's very supportive and very helpful, and that we need to really take advantage of that. We have foundations, we have other private sector partners who are willing and able and wanting to help. So don't be afraid, don't be overwhelmed by the problem, don't forget about the partnership. And last but not least, be persistent but sure participate.
I think this is a tremendous show of attention for today's agenda. It's a very important agenda, and I applaud you for being here, for caring and thinking about how we can work this through. Of course, Mayor, Judy and I were sitting there and we said, those red buildings we see, what would it take to renovate and create some exciting housing? And I hope you're thinking like that too, as you think about what we can do, because housing is a critical issue across the city. It's not just for returning citizens and their families. It's for what we call the newbies. It's for everyone. Seniors want to have a decent place to live. Many of them are tenants, and they'd like to have the communal kind of living environment. And they're thinking that their churches, Reverend, need to do more. And we're thinking as a total community, we've got to get this right. We have to get the families out of the shelters. We know how terrible that is. And I know that Mayor Gray and his team are working, I hope, around the clock. I'm pretty sure they are, because we all live in this city. We all embrace this city and what it really means to us. So I applaud you again. Happy to be here with you. And yes, do not forget to vote April 1. Do not live by the Washington Post that said, 40,000 only were coming out? That's absurd. You know more of us are going to get out there and vote. It's very important. It's about our dignity, okay? So remember to do that. But thanks very much for having an opportunity with you. Thanks, Reverend.
Again, my name is Courtney Stewart, and I'm the chairman of the Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. And I want everyone to just think about, the things that we discussed here today, and remember that, this is art. It's not a science, and it is going to take some time, but, we're working. It's a lot of us are doing some good work, and I want to thank the mayor. I want us to give the mayor a round of applause for coming out. You heard from the directors of a lot of agencies in the district government today. So if you have any further questions, you can definitely direct those questions to me and Charles, and we can make sure that these individuals get your questions. But for now, I want to thank you for coming out. I really appreciate all that we hopefully we establish, the reason why we gathered here today. And we'll keep on looking for answers to the hard questions. And thank you again.